Have you ever felt that inexplicable connection with someone that goes beyond logic, beyond what any relationship manual could ever explain? That deep sense of recognition that makes your heart race not from passion, but from a familiarity you can't quite put your finger on? As if somehow you've known this person for far longer than humanly possible? I know you've been there. And I also know you might be wondering if you were just imagining things, if maybe you were projecting your desires onto someone who didn't feel the same way. The truth is, there's a specific phenomenon that happens when two soulmates meet. A sign so subtle that 99% of people completely ignore it and spend their entire lives without recognizing it. What I'm going to share with you today isn't just psychological theory. It's the result of decades of study by Carl Jung about profound human connections, about how souls recognize each other beyond the veil of personality and circumstances. It's about understanding that some people enter our lives not by chance, but because there's something much greater orchestrating these encounters. If you're watching this particular video right now, among the thousands of videos you could be watching, if something inside you brought you here, maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe your soul is trying to tell you something your rational mind hasn't been able to accept yet. And if you stay until the end of this video, you'll understand why you might have missed opportunities to recognize your soulmate in the past. And more importantly, you'll know exactly what to do when this sign appears in your life. First, we need to understand what soulmate really means beyond the romantic cliches that pop culture has sold us. Because the truth is, most people have a completely misguided understanding of what a soulmate is, and this confusion is exactly what prevents them from recognizing the real one when it appears. Jung didn't use the exact term soulmate, but his studies on synchronicity, archetypes, and the collective unconscious give us the most solid scientific foundation for understanding these extraordinary connections. For Jung, certain people enter our lives as part of an archetypal process of psychological wholeness. They don't come to complete us as if we were incomplete halves, but to mirror aspects of our psyche that need to be integrated. Here's something that might shock you. Your soulmate isn't necessarily the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. She's not necessarily the one who's going to make you happy forever, or solve all your problems. In fact, your soulmate might be the person who's going to challenge you most deeply, who's going to catalyze the most intense transformations of your life, who's going to force you to confront aspects of yourself you didn't even know existed. This doesn't mean the connection is painful or destructive. It means it's transformative. It means that when you meet your soulmate, you don't remain the same person. Something fundamental changes in you, and that change is permanent. It's as if a dormant part of your soul finally awakens. Jung observed that these connections have a numinous quality, a sacred dimension that transcends ordinary romantic love. They operate on frequencies that go beyond personality compatibility, common interests, or even physical attraction. There's something he called archetypal recognition, a form of knowing that comes from the deepest part of the psyche. And here's where we reach the crucial point. If soulmates recognize each other at such deep levels, why is it so hard to identify them? Why do so many people spend their entire lives searching without finding? The answer lies in the fact that we're looking in the wrong places, paying attention to the wrong signs. Most people look for surface compatibility, for someone who makes them feel good, who shares their interests, who's physically attractive. But Jung discovered that soulmate connections often challenge these expectations. They can happen with people who, on the surface, seem completely different from us, or even incompatible. This happens because your soulmate isn't the person who fits perfectly into your life as it is. She's the person who awakens in you the life you're not yet living. She's the one who shows you possibilities of being that you never imagined existed. That's why the encounter with a soulmate can be simultaneously the most beautiful and the most unsettling experience of our lives. Now, you're probably wondering, how do you recognize a soulmate if it's not through obvious compatibility? How do you know if that person who awakens something inexplicable in you is really special, or if you're just projecting your desires? The answer lies in the sign that 99% of people completely ignore. But before I reveal it, I need you to understand that this sign isn't something you see once, and that's it. It's something that manifests consistently over time. It's subtle, but once you learn to recognize it, it becomes unmistakable. And most importantly, it's mutual. It's not something only you feel, but something that operates in the connection between both of you. This sign is related to time. Not chronological time, but what Jung called qualitative time, or kairos. It's the way time behaves when you're together, how it distorts, expands, transforms. It's something so subtle that our rational mind easily ignores it, but something so powerful that our soul never forgets. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. A woman wrote to me about an encounter she had with someone at a coffee shop. They talked for what seemed like a few minutes, but when she looked at her watch, she discovered that 3 hours had passed. Not only that, but throughout the entire conversation, she had the sensation that she was in a time bubble, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. This isn't just romanticizing. It's a real phenomenon that happens when two consciousnesses connect at deep levels. Jung called this the suspension of ordinary time. It's as if, in the presence of your soulmate, you access a different dimension of reality, where the normal laws of time and space don't apply in the same way. Now, here's the most ignored sign that someone is your soulmate. It's the way time behaves not just when you're together, but when you're apart. It's the phenomenon I call the temporal synchronization of longing. Let me explain. When you're away from your soulmate, you don't just miss them. You feel a specific form of longing that seems to be synchronized with something greater. It's as if there's a cosmic rhythm in the way you think about that person, as if your heart is beating to the tempo of something that transcends your individual experience. But what's most extraordinary is that this synchronization is mutual. You might be thinking intensely about your soulmate at a specific moment, and discover later that they were thinking about you at exactly the same instant. Not just occasionally, but with a frequency that defies any statistical explanation. Jung studied this phenomenon and concluded that it indicates a connection through what he called the collective unconscious. It's as if two soulmates share a common emotional frequency, a communication channel that operates beyond the 5 physical senses. When one feels the absence, the other automatically resonates with that energy. This can manifest in subtle ways. You might wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that person, only to discover that they were going through a difficult time at that exact moment. Or you might feel an inexplicable wave of love and gratitude for them, and later discover that they were, at that very instant, sending the same energy in your direction. Modern science is beginning to validate what Jung intuited decades ago. Studies on quantum entanglement suggest that particles that have been connected maintain an instantaneous correlation, regardless of the distance that separates them. Some researchers propose that something similar might happen with consciousnesses that have connected deeply. But here's what most people don't understand. This temporal synchronization of longing isn't just about missing someone. It's about a specific form of missing that carries information, that brings knowledge, that generates growth. When you long for your soulmate, you're not just yearning for their presence. You're receiving transmissions about their emotional state, about what they're experiencing, about lessons you're learning in parallel. This is radically different from ordinary longing, which is mainly about lack, about wanting something we don't have. Soulmate longing is about recognition, about celebrating a connection that transcends physical presence. That's why, paradoxically, you can miss your soulmate and at the same time feel complete, connected, at peace. Now, you might be wondering, how do you distinguish between this sacred longing and ordinary longing? How do you know if you're really experiencing this sign, or just romanticizing an intense attraction? The answer lies in paying attention to the quality of the experience, not just its intensity. Soulmate longing has some specific characteristics that make it unmistakable. First, it's not desperate. There's no anxiety, no compulsive need for immediate contact. It's a longing that carries peace, that accepts separation as a necessary part of the mutual growth process. It's as if, even in physical absence, you know the connection remains intact. Second, this longing is creative. It doesn't paralyze you or make you suffer destructively. On the contrary, it inspires you. It can awaken your creativity, your spirituality, your capacity to love more deeply. It's as if the energy of the connection continues flowing even across distance, nourishing aspects of your personality that might have been dormant. Third, it's educational. When you long for your soulmate, you learn things about yourself you didn't know before. You discover emotional capacities you didn't know you had, develop insights about the nature of love that transcend your previous experience. It's as if the longing itself is a form of spiritual initiation. Fourth, it's generous. Soulmate longing isn't possessive. You don't want to control or limit the other person. On the contrary, you genuinely want them to be happy, to grow, to become the best version of themselves, even if that means they need to be away from you for a while. It's a type of love that liberates instead of imprisoning. Jung observed that these characteristics of soulmate longing reflect what he called individuated love, a form of love that's only possible when two people have at least partially completed their self-knowledge process. It's love between two wholes, not between two lacks seeking completion. But here's something that might surprise you. Temporal synchronization of longing can happen even when you're not consciously thinking about the person. It can manifest in simultaneous dreams, in inexplicable mood changes that you later discover coincided with significant moments in their life, or in synchronicities that seem orchestrated by a higher intelligence. Let me share another example. A man told me that for months, he had recurring dreams about a woman he'd met briefly. He had no information about her, didn't know where she was, but the dreams were so vivid that he'd wake up certain that some kind of communication had taken place. Months later, when they reconnected, she told him that during the same period she had dreamed about him every night. Always at the same time he reported having his dreams. This isn't fantasy or wishful thinking. It's a documented phenomenon that happens more frequently than we imagine. Jung believed that when two people have a deep archetypal connection, their unconscious minds can literally communicate through dimensions our science is still learning to understand. The question is, why do 99% of people ignore this sign? Why does something so powerful and revealing go unnoticed? The answer lies in how our culture has taught us to think about relationships and human connections. We live in a society that values the immediate, the obvious, the measurable. We've been conditioned to look for external signs, observable behaviors, concrete proof. But temporal synchronization of longing operates at subtle levels of human experience that our emotional education rarely teaches us to recognize. Furthermore, our culture romanticizes the idea that true love should be easy, comfortable, free of complications. But Jung discovered that the most transformative connections often come accompanied by challenges, by growth that can be uncomfortable, by invitations to transcend limitations we didn't even know we had. That's why when we experience temporal synchronization of longing, our first reaction might be resistance. It might seem too intense, too spiritual, outside our emotional comfort zone. We prefer simpler, more controllable, more predictable explanations. But here's the truth Jung taught us. The most significant experiences of our lives are rarely simple, controllable, or predictable. They ask us to expand our understanding of what's possible, to accept that there are dimensions of human experience that transcend our everyday logic. If you've been experiencing this kind of synchronization with someone, if you've felt this specific form of longing that seems connected to something greater, pay attention. Don't dismiss it as imagination or coincidence. It might be that your soul is trying to communicate something your mind isn't ready to fully accept yet. Now, it's important to understand that temporal synchronization of longing isn't the only sign of a soulmate connection, but it's the most ignored, because it's the most subtle. There are other signs that tend to be more obvious, but that can be easily confused with other types of attraction or connection. For example, immediate recognition is common in soulmate encounters, but it can also happen with other people who simply remind us of someone from the past. The sensation of familiarity can be powerful, but our mind is expert at creating familiarity where it doesn't necessarily exist. The capacity for deep communication is also frequent with soulmates, but intellectually compatible people can have equally deep conversations without necessarily having a soul connection. The same goes for intense physical attraction or the sensation of completeness in the other's presence. But temporal synchronization of longing is different. It can't be fabricated by the mind, can't be projected by the ego, can't be confused with other types of experience. It is, in its essence, a communication between souls that transcends the normal mechanisms of the human psyche. Jung said that some phenomena can only be experienced, not explained. Temporal synchronization of longing is one of those phenomena. You can't prove it scientifically, can't demonstrate it to other people. But when you experience it, you know with a certainty that goes beyond logic. This leads us to a crucial question. What do you do when you recognize this sign? How do you respond to temporal synchronization of longing in a way that honors the sacredness of the connection without falling into obsession or fantasy? The first thing is to accept that you might be experiencing something extraordinary. Don't minimize the experience. Don't try to rationalize it until it loses its transformative power. At the same time, don't get lost in it. Keep your feet on the ground while allowing your soul to expand. Jung emphasized the importance of what he called creative tension, the ability to maintain opposites in balance. In the case of temporal synchronization of longing, this means honoring both the transcendent dimension of the experience and your current responsibilities and relationships. It means allowing the connection to transform you without using it as an excuse to avoid the personal growth that only you can do. If the person with whom you experience this synchronization is available and mutual, the next step might be an honest conversation about what you've both been experiencing. But do this carefully, without expectations, without trying to force the other to validate your experience. Each soul has its own timing, its own awakening process. If the person isn't available, or if circumstances don't allow for physical union, this doesn't diminish the importance of the connection. Jung believed that some soulmates come to teach us about transcendent forms of love that don't require possession or conventional relationship. They show us that it's possible to love deeply without needing to have. That it's possible to be transformed by a connection, even when it doesn't manifest the way we'd expect. Regardless of external circumstances, temporal synchronization of longing is always an invitation to growth. It's a sign that you're ready for an expansion of consciousness, for a more mature form of loving, for a deeper understanding of your own spiritual nature. There are practices that can help you honor and cultivate this experience. Meditation, for example, can make you more sensitive to the subtleties of synchronization. When you feel longing for your soulmate, instead of trying to suppress it or satisfy it through external contact, you can use it as a doorway to deeper states of consciousness. Jung also recommended dream work during periods of intense synchronization with a soulmate. Dreams can carry messages, insights, and even forms of communication that transcend physical limitations. Keeping a dream journal can reveal patterns and meanings that your conscious mind can't capture. Creative expression is another powerful way to honor temporal synchronization of longing. Many people discover that their creativity intensifies when they're connected to their soulmate. It might be that the energy of the connection needs channels of expression, and art, music, writing can be ways of giving form to what is essentially inexpressible. But perhaps the most important practice is simply conscious presence. When you feel temporal synchronization of longing, allow yourself to be completely present with the experience. Don't try to change it. Don't try to intensify it. Don't try to make it last longer or shorter. Simply receive it as a gift, as a reminder that you're part of something much greater than your individual existence. Jung observed that the most transformative experiences of our lives often come disguised as simplicity. Temporal synchronization of longing might seem like just an intense form of missing someone, but it's actually an initiation into higher forms of love and consciousness. This leads us to a deeper understanding of why this sign is so ignored. It's not just because it's subtle, but because recognizing it requires a fundamental change in how we see relationships, love, and our own spiritual nature. It means accepting that we're more than physical bodies with emotional needs, that we're eternal souls participating in a cosmic dance of recognition and mutual growth. For many people, this perspective is too radical. It's easier to keep relationships in the comfort zone of surface compatibility than to venture into the unexplored territories of soul connection. But for those who have the courage to recognize temporal synchronization of longing, a world of possibilities opens up that transcends everything they imagined was possible in human love. Now, it's important to address something that might be worrying you. What if you're imagining this synchronization? What if it's just wishful thinking or projection of your desires onto a situation that has nothing special about it? Jung had a practical answer to this concern. He said that imagination and projection tend to diminish over time, while genuine soul connections tend to deepen. If you're really experiencing temporal synchronization of longing with your soulmate, the experience won't wear out over time. It might change, evolve, become more subtle or more intense, but it won't simply disappear like ordinary passion. Furthermore, true synchronization has a quality of inevitability that differentiates it from fantasy. With fantasy, you can control when you think about the person, can direct your feelings, can create mental scenarios that satisfy your desires. But with temporal synchronization of longing, you become aware that something is happening that's beyond your control, something that has its own logic and timing. Another important test is to observe whether the experience is leading you to growth or stagnation. Genuine soulmate connections always catalyze growth, even when they're challenging. If you're experiencing temporal synchronization of longing, and it's inspiring you to become a better version of yourself, to develop qualities you didn't know you had, to question limitations you previously accepted as absolute, then you're probably dealing with something real. On the other hand, if the experience is making you obsessive, causing you to neglect other areas of life, or creating unrealistic expectations that generate constant frustration, you might be confusing intense desire with genuine spiritual connection. Jung emphasized that true soulmate connections are always mutually elevating. Even when the other person isn't physically present, even when circumstances don't allow union, the connection should inspire the best in both. If you're feeling diminished, controlled, or trapped by the experience, something isn't right. But if you're experiencing temporal synchronization of longing, in a way that connects you more deeply with your own essence, that inspires you to love more maturely and generously, that gives you insights into the sacred nature of human connections, then you might be experiencing one of the most extraordinary phenomena of human experience. Now let me share something that might be both comforting and challenging. Temporal synchronization of longing isn't a guarantee that you and your soulmate will end up together in this lifetime. Jung believed that some soulmates meet to teach specific lessons, to catalyze specific growth, to open doors of consciousness that couldn't be opened any other way. This doesn't make the connection less significant. In fact, it might make it more precious. When you understand that your soulmate might be in your life for reasons that transcend romance or conventional relationship, you can receive the gift of the connection without the expectations that often destroy special relationships. Some of the most beautiful soulmate stories Jung documented were about people who met briefly, recognized the deep connection, and then went separate ways, but carried the mark of that encounter forever. They described how the experience had transformed their capacity to love, their understanding of themselves, their perspective on what's possible in human life. This doesn't mean you should give up seeking union with your soulmate if circumstances allow. It means you can keep your expectations fluid, that you can value the connection for what it is, not just for what it might become. Jung said that mature love is one that can celebrate the connection without trying to control it, that can receive the gift of mutual recognition without transforming it into possession. Temporal synchronization of longing can be a school for this kind of elevated love. As you navigate this experience, remember that you're not alone. Throughout history, sensitive people have experienced this form of transcendent connection. Mystics, artists, philosophers, ordinary people who had the courage to recognize that there are dimensions of human experience that go beyond what our culture normally accepts. You're part of a lineage of souls that chose to grow through love, that used their deepest connections as catalysts to become more than they were before. This is a sacred journey, even when it's challenging. If you've made it this far, if these words have resonated with something in your experience, maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe your soul is ready to recognize temporal synchronization of longing, to honor the deep connections that already exist or are yet to come in your life. Pay attention to the subtle moments of longing that carry information. Notice if your thoughts about someone special seem synchronized with a greater intelligence. Allow yourself to consider that you might be participating in something that transcends the normal laws of time and space. But above all, allow this experience to transform you. Use temporal synchronization of longing as an invitation to love more deeply, more generously, more consciously. Let it teach you about the sacred nature of all human connections, about the mystery and beauty of being an embodied soul in this world. The journey of soulmate recognition doesn't end with identifying the sign. In fact, it's just beginning. Each day, each moment of synchronization, each wave of sacred longing is an opportunity to grow, to become more than you were, to contribute something unique and precious to the great tapestry of human consciousness. Remember, you're not just seeking a special person. You're seeking a higher version of yourself, a more mature form of loving, a deeper understanding of what it means to be truly human. And temporal synchronization of longing might be the key that opens all these doors. If you felt that these words spoke directly to your soul, if you recognize temporal synchronization of longing in your own experience, leave in the comments, "I recognize the sign." That way, I'll know the message reached where it needed to go. And if this content truly touched you, consider supporting the channel by hitting the thanks button below. Your contribution allows me to continue producing deep content about soul, transformation, and rebirth. Every support, no matter how small, makes a real difference and is received with great gratitude. And to continue exploring the deepest mysteries of human connections, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, we'll keep unveiling the secrets Jung discovered about the human soul and love that transcends all limitations.